Well, good afternoon, guys. This is Saturday afternoon, just about 2:30. Good to be with you guys again. We're still in the book of Luke. The title of the lesson today is called Revealed. Jesus reveals his identity to those who seek him. Good lesson, and I think you'll find it really encouraging. It has some good points, as do all the lessons, but this really does have some good points. And I'm going to go ahead and read this, and then we can get started. It's from Luke 24, verses 18 to 31. Okay, verse 18. The one named Cleopas answered him, "Are you the only visitor in Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked them. So they said to him, "The things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, powerful in action and speech before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we were hoping that he was the one who was about to redeem Israel. Besides all this, it's the third day since these things happened. Moreover, some women from our group astounded us. They arrived early at the tomb, and when they didn't find his body, they came and reported that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they didn't see him." Verse 25, he said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Wasn't it necessary for the Messiah to suffer these things and enter into his glory? Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted for them the things concerning himself and all the scriptures." Verse 28, they came near the village where they were going, and he gave the impression that he was going further, but they urged him, "Stay with us, because it's almost evening, and now the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. It was as he reclined at the table with them that he took the bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, but he disappeared from their sight. Interesting, at the beginning of the lesson, talks about how things can be frustrating. I've been in this position, and I'm sure each one of you guys at one time or another in your life, when you were young or even right now. I mean, we're not immune from this happening. We don't understand something, we don't know how something works. We can't figure something out, then the light bulb goes off. We can't, and I especially have a problem with this. I'll go ahead and admit, I don't know if you guys do or not, but we have trouble remembering how we know somebody until they say or do something that triggers our memory. I mean, I don't know how many people I see, and what's frustrating is that they know who I am, and it is really frustrating. They know who I am, call me by name, and I don't have a clue who they are. And then after we talk a minute or two out in public or wherever we might be, we'll be walking away. I mean, and she'll ask me, say, "Now, who was that?" I said, "I don't have a clue." But I stayed right there and talked to them just as if I knew everything about them, but I didn't know who in the heck it was. But and maybe sometimes I never did figure out who it was, but I just went right along and too embarrassed or ashamed or whatever to tell them, "I don't know who the heck you are, but you can keep talking." I never did say that, but I guess maybe I should have in some cases. But you know how light bulbs that go off and you'll finally figure something. I said, "Oh, is that the way that works?" Or whatever it might be, a tool but but then it clicks, something just, and I've been in that situation too, and maybe you guys have. But, after, you finally wake up or something and you're asleep with your eyes open, you can't figure it out. But we've all been there like that. But it does say some people have a hard time understanding Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. He's ready to reveal the truth to those who seek him, and this is all in his word, like we said, and the truths are in his word. And All we have to do is believe. Now, we may not understand everything, or we're not going to understand everything, but we just have to trust and believe, don't we? That's where our faith comes in. You know what he did, his death, burial, and resurrection, laid out in the scriptures. You know, and he'll reveal it to us, you know, if we seek him. You know, but the main place for this lesson this week is on the road to Emmaus, and how Jesus kind of tricked a couple of the disciples, and they didn't know who the heck he was, and anyway, they were going along there, and then in verses 18 to 25, it tells you about this trip and this interaction between this so-called stranger, who we know was Jesus, but now these two disciples didn't know, and they were carrying on. You know, they couldn't understand why he didn't know all the activities that had been going on, and how, you know, women, you know, that from their group astounded them, how they arrived early at the tomb and they didn't find his body, and they came back and reported that they had seen a vision of angels who said that he wasn't there, he wasn't in the tomb, he was alive, he had risen. And somebody, you know, some of the disciples went back, they ran to the tomb because they didn't understand, or maybe they didn't believe, and they didn't see him. So so this mystery traveler asked them. Asked the two disciples, so why are you having trouble? Why are you having with each other your dispute while you're walking? And and after, like I said, you know, the stranger, you know, was Jesus. So really the joke was on the two disciples, because he made it to where they couldn't even see, they couldn't recognize him. You know, all these little things along the way in Jesus during his ministry, you know, he set the stage, he did the little things, you know, along the way, the little things that we may not even think of, you know, but it shows you how important little things are that happen along life's way, because little things can become big things, can't they? And if we're not careful. And but he didn't want them to recognize him, because they probably would have recognized him, because he did something to their eyes where they couldn't recognize him. You know, Jesus thinking about all these little old things. But the description of the authorities, you know, of Jesus pointed to his human identity. They didn't, it seemed that these two guys, they didn't understand Jesus' divine nature as the Messiah. And they were looking for the Messiah who would redeem them by political power. But we all know, you know, Jesus came to redeem us, redeem them, the disciples, and all of us really, from a power much greater than political authorities. But they were all hung up in the politics and everything. And what he can, you know, his power, you know, because of that, he can redeem them. Kind of like today, everything's all tied up in politics and everything, and they think that's going to be that cure-all for everything. You know, spend all this money that we don't have, and, you know, it's a dead-end road is what it's going to amount to, and you know, but anyway, I just thought of that, you know. It says, you know, you could say that they were expecting God to redeem Israel from their suffering rather than redeem his people through his own suffering. You know, they thought from their suffering he was going to redeem them from, you know, what they had did. It never has been, even then, and it's not today. It's nothing that we've done, is it? It's never has been about what we've done. No suffering, you know, He's not going to redeem us because of what we've been going through. It's not about us. Never has been and never will be. And you know, we're never going to be good enough. I mean, I know there's people running around today who think that, you know, look at me, look at my last name, look where I live, look what I've done, look who I am. I'm Mr. Billionaire or zillionaire or whatever. You know, you can have all the money in the world, but go straight to hell. You know, so it's not about us, and we all know that. You know, but it sure doesn't hurt to reiterate it, does it? You know, but they were just confused and didn't understand. I thought it was about their suffering that he came to redeem. You know, no, it wasn't about them, it was about him. And we all know that. So, you know, it says their suffering rather than redeem his people through his suffering. And that's the key right there, his suffering. And then, you know, I had mentioned about the women. And of course, women were, during that time, they weren't very, very credible. They weren't really reliable. They didn't, you know, it says the testimony of women was not admissible evidence in a Roman or Jewish court of law. So whatever they said or saw didn't really hold up very much. I guess that's why so many people ran back to the tomb and checked it to see, you know, what's going on. But the disciples, they were first astounded by the news of the resurrection, but points back to verse 11, where the initial report seemed like nonsense. You know, from these women, you know, they didn't believe them because it was a woman told them. And that's why some of them ran to the tomb to see for themselves. And they found it empty just like the women said. So, but isn't that kind of, there's a point here. There's a sense in which all of us, that's everybody, me included, should, you know, all of us should go and see for ourselves. Do we believe people? Do we take them at their word? I know years ago we could, but even today, sometimes we want to just check and make sure, you know, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, you know, but it says if the resurrection did happen, then nothing matters more. We should all search the scriptures and see for ourselves, and that's where we should go. Don't go to the library and go to some scientific whatever, or books on authorities, so-called authorities, and you know, they're out there everywhere. I mean, there's some credible, godly men that, you know, that, I mean, they're fine. I mean, their opinions and all. But I mean, you can't go wrong with the scriptures, can you? And it's laid out in there about what he did for us, and you can trust and believe his word. And it says that the scriptures testified Jesus was crucified for our sin and rose again to redeem us from our sinfulness. And that's where, you know, you can't go wrong. That is steady in the boat, guaranteed. But verses 25 to 27 talk about, you know, the answers. And this stranger, Jesus, he just rebuked them. These disciples, these two disciples walking with him on the road to Emmaus were initially unwilling to believe the report of his resurrection. But Jesus rebuked them. How foolish you are, it says in verse 25, and how slow to believe. And they were just unable or unwilling to understand something that should have been obvious. I mean, he had predicted this stuff. He predicted what was going to happen. They had failed to understand that Jesus came to fulfill all that the Old Testament pointed toward. They just blew that off, you know. He asked if they did not understand why it was necessary for the Messiah to suffer these things. His suffering and crucifixion was where these two disciples and others struggled. He did not fit the model. He did not fit that person that they had envisioned. They just really couldn't understand or accept that the crucifixion was necessary. You know, but all of it was necessary, the suffering and death, necessary for him to enter into his glory or his return to heaven. You know, and all this prophecy and everything, like in verse 27, Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted for them the things concerning himself in all the scriptures. You know, and like I said, you know, everything going on, even about him and what he did, not what we did, but what he did. It reveals his truth through the scriptures, the basis of our belief. That's it. It's not what you see on Fox. It's not what you read in the paper. It's the scriptures, the basis of our belief. The fulfillment of scores of prophecies over thousands of years points to one undeniable truth. Jesus is the Messiah. And that will always be, guys. We can take that to the bank. That will always be. Prophecies over thousands of years. Isn't that something we can just grab a hold of that and put it in our pocket or put it in our mind and always have it, because it's never going to go away. We can always refer to it. But verses 28 to 31 talk about this. As they got near the village, you know, Jesus, you know, it went past the village, but Jesus, you know, gave the impression that he was going to keep on going, like it says in verse 28, but they wanted him to stay. So at that time, Jesus' explanation of scriptures had moved them, and they wanted to hear more. But it says Jesus, he planned to leave soon from that area. But before doing so, he wanted them to have the blessings of seeing him clearly. And so in verses 30 and 31, says it was verse 30, it was as he had reclined at the table with them that he took the bread, blessed and broke it and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him, but he disappeared from their sight. So because these two disciples, they believed, they wanted to hear more. But of course, they weren't in the upper room. These two disciples weren't with the apostles at the Passover meal. But unless the apostles had discussed it with other disciples, they may not have understood how the bread represented his body that was broken for them. The timing of the disciples' awareness is important. As Jesus blessed and broke the bread, their eyes, which had been prevented from recognizing Jesus early in the evening, was open. They were opened. And I thought this was interesting. This phrase reminds us of other occasions when people were prevented from seeing spiritual matters until God opened their eyes. You remember the road to Damascus, how Saul, Jesus blinded him for a few days, didn't he? Then when he got his heart and life right, Jesus, opened his eyes. It says, can you imagine these disciples wondered how they hadn't recognized him until this moment, but almost immediately he disappeared from their sight. And after the resurrection, he had a glorified body that was no longer limited by time and space. But it says, and I like this statement, the last one in the lesson. Only when we sit with Jesus, experience his presence, and have our eyes open spiritually, do we understand who he is. Isn't that right? Isn't that something? Kind of dwell on that thought from, says that, at first the other disciples thought they were seeing a ghost, but these two saw and knew this was Jesus. So when when our eyes open spiritually, everything comes into focus, doesn't it? All people should be encouraged to discover the truth about Jesus. He reveals his truth through his word, and he does, doesn't he? We just have to believe it. The Holy Spirit helps people understand the truth about Jesus. I just thought it was a great lesson, some good thoughts. and how we just, you know, these guys were blinded, but he let them see, then they, you know, but God laid it out in prophecy, you know, all these things, you know, it wasn't like he put a surprise on people, because he told through prophecy, you know, from the beginning of time, the beginning of the Bible, things that he was going to do, but they didn't understand or didn't believe it or didn't connect it. And that's the way a lot of people are today, isn't it? They just don't, believe or understand or realize how powerful a book the Bible is. And it's the Word of God, isn't it? So we should always rely on it, study. It's the roadmap. And it has everything in there we'll ever need. So good lesson, guys, and I hope you were encouraged. And in the way of prayer requests, let's remember our church. Let's remember our class. And we're supposed to, in a few weeks, we're supposed to meet on Sunday. That'll be in Lisa Methodist's old classroom. I think it's room 501, I believe it is. But you know, it's the corner. It's right across, that's on that corner of that building on the other side of George Vining's classroom. But that's where we'll be meeting. We're just flip-flopping us in Lisa's class. But I think that's the June the 6th, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll let you know more later. But it's coming up. If you feel comfortable, you know, be sure by all means, you know, let's join up. And but I understand if you don't. I'm not telling you you've got to be there. It's your call. But I sure would be encouraged by you being there, and hopefully we'll all be encouraged. It's just been a long time. It hasn't over a year, and that's hard to believe, really, that we've been able to be in a classroom together. But I hope you guys are doing well, and if not, may God intervene and wrap his arms around you and encourage you as we come to an end of another school year and college year, and a lot of things going on, a lot of people graduating, and new lives beginning here and there, and people having babies, and it's just a lot of good things going on, but there's also some sad things. So let's always be mindful of those things people are going through and all. And one thing I think of, like today, Brian and Lydia will be getting married later on this evening. So let's just pray for them. They're a young couple that God will just pave their way and bless them and lead, guide, and direct them and in their young lives as they begin their lives together. And let's remember our church family, those going through difficult times, lost loved ones, people in hospitals having tests and surgeries, and just so many things going on. And I pray that you continue to be with our staff, bless and pray for them, pray for our country. Let's have a word of prayer before we close. Lord, thank you for this day, for all your many blessings. Thank you for your word and the truths in it. Thank you for our class. And I pray, Father, that you'll just be each man and encourage and lift them up through your word, through this lesson, and maybe just whatever they need, Father. I pray that you'll just encourage them and lift them up. And hopefully everybody's feeling okay. And if not, I pray that you'll just help them to feel better, touch them and heal them in accordance to your will. Be with our church family. Be with those in our church family that are sick, going through difficult times, maybe lost loved ones. And I pray that you'll just be with them, Father. Now, give us a good day in your house tomorrow. And I pray, Father, we'll just be encouraged by who you are and what you mean to us and what you did for us on the cross. In your name I pray. Amen. Guys, again, it's been great to be with you. Take care, and I hope to see y'all real soon. And I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Take care now. Bye.